We're continuing our series of discussions called What? And this morning, we're going to ask Joe to introduce something about ego. Joe, you quite often use the word ego when you're speaking about different aspects of spirituality. So, what do you mean by ego?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Interestingly, just now when we were wondering about that, I had the impression that we were all talking about ego quite often, quite a lot. But that may be because sometimes we're using the word mind, and there is a certain coincidence sometimes between mind and ego, I think, in the way that we use those words. But um, but ego, I think, is a really important um, concept, um, and um, for me, I think it's often misused. Um, I I I think of the human being as um, as as a being of different layers. Um, Much as perhaps uh, Saint Teresa's castle, only that's entirely interior. But so our body is the most um, dense layer, let's say. That's obvious. We need a body in to be here on this planet, to be incarnate. That's what the word means, I think, to be in the flesh. And then um, we then need mind, and an important part of mind is ego. That part of mind which, as a child, develops, which helps the child, us as when we're children, to distinguish between ourselves and everything else, to in fact fully incarnate. Um, and therefore, um, ego to me is a neutral thing. We can't be here without an ego. Um, and We all need one. Um, and so that's the kind of, as it were, the next dense layer. This is how I see it. Um, and then denser still is the heart, denser still the soul, denser still the spirit. So denser, more interior. Um, I feel that when any of us talks about ego, there's the sort of and mind generally is that we're trying to get rid of it. That's the um at a sort of general impressionistic level, that's what I feel, that we're saying too much, that we're trying to get rid of ego. We're trying to do this thing which is in quite often in well, Eastern religions, in particular, which is this idea of annihilation. And so annihilation is a word which sometimes we could look at in relation to how we use it in relation to ego. So um, I think ego can be a good thing and it can be a not good thing, depending on how we use it. It can be a barrier to our uh, deeper spirituality, or it can be a help to it. It can be of service to it. And we need to function in the world with ego. We need to we need a robust ego to um to survive in the world. It's very hard, and when we're on the spiritual path, um, we need it even more. Um, towards God, we need to melt. Um, but in the world, we need to be strong enough to stand up um, and to survive. But that ego needs to be in the service of our soul. So that's my view of ego. That's probably cobbled together from a lot of sources. That's partly how I interpret the Sufi teaching I've received, but also from my experience as a play therapist. And so being immersed in child development theory and practice. So I wondered whether today, yeah, we might exchange views on ego, actually.
I guess we can all talk about what we feel ego is or symbolizes. So I wonder from a psychological background, Malcolm, if you have anything scientifically to say about it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, the term itself, people associate with Freud, of course, but I don't think we're talking psychoanalysis here, are we?
No.
We're talking that this what we mean spiritually by using the word ego, and that's a bit different. I think for me, when Joe, you talk about that growing sense of being an individual, but for me, that yes, ego is that belief that we are separate, autonomous, individual beings. And that for me is a delusion.
Yeah, another word we've used.
Yeah, I'm not in reality, I'm not a separate, autonomous individual being. I'm part of the one, part of the whole. But that sense of being a separate, autonomous individual is somehow necessary, not only in practical terms to live in the world, but also necessary spiritually to make a. It's very difficult to talk about, isn't it? Because it's not something we normally express, but so it's good to have the conversation. But you need that sense of being, of having, being an autonomous individual in order to make the choice between whether we turn towards the things of this world or whether we turn towards God and the kingdom of heaven. And that's the only choice we make, actually. And it's almost like we're given that sense of being an individual so that we can make that choice, because without that sense of being an individual, we couldn't choose anything. We'd just be buffeted about. We'd just be subject to whatever was going on. But we do make that choice, and that is that's the ego is the agency for making that choice for me. And if we turn that towards the world and value the things of the world, that we are a separate being from the world and the world is there for our use, then that's a, for want of a better word, a demonic use of the ego. whereas turning towards the kingdom of heaven is a spiritual use of the ego. And once you'd make that turn, then you can give yourself up to it and you can be annihilated in it. And the Christian mystics talk about annihilation, a drop of rain falling in the ocean kind of thing. And to be annihilated in the kingdom of heaven is a good thing, and to be annihilated by being immersed in the world is to live in hell.
Mm.
Again, for want of a better word. So that would be my sort of concept.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's something that's very difficult to talk about and think about. So something that you said, Joe, about the survival in the world, I think for me, the concept of ego is connected to that, and to decision making. But the problem that I have with talking about it and thinking about it is that for me it's the ego that does the talking, the choice of language, the thinking about things. I think it's the ego, something in the conscious mind, though ego can also be something that's lying dormant in the unconscious mind and can lead us to make all kinds of decisions based on fear. So there's both conscious and unconscious ego for me going on, and it's going on all the time. And we've talked about it quite a lot, I think, in our studies, notably in the Interior Castle. I think we probably all talked about ego quite a lot during that, and also when we were looking at the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, was it? The climbing of the tree.
The tree.
But it's almost counterintuitive to me to talk about it, because contemplative spirituality is about descending from, well, just as a symbol, descending from the mind to the heart, so creating space for deeper experience, deeper communication, relationship with humanity, divine creation, and so on, to take place. So the ego, for me, is something that seeks to control the environment. Something, it's survival based. It's perhaps instinctive, humanly instinctive, maybe connected to fight and flight, which would be connected to instincts within animals as well. You see, I just find it really difficult to talk about, because I can't just bring it into contemplation and then talk about it, or talk about it from a contemplative moment. As soon as I want to talk about it, it's the ego that's talking for me. So it's like it's going to defend itself. It's going to make itself sound like something we need. We might talk about annihilation of the ego, but the ego's talking about annihilation of the ego. So it's kind of, it's like, I suppose, a public figure that seems to symbolize ego more than anything else is Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump will argue either way as long as he survives. So the ego seems to do that for me. So talking about it, it's just really, really difficult. I find that so difficult.
Mm-hmm. But to me, this is our spiritual path. It's to be aware of when our ego is working for us and when it's working against us. And by us, I mean our soul, really. Because yes, the ego is about control, but if we have awareness, we give it things to control, which which is helpful to our spiritual life. So, for example, we decide to have our practice period in the day. We decide to commit to a course of action which is helpful in um, our soul's journey, or to do good in some circumstance, and our ego, if it is under the command of our soul, um, uh, and I think, in a sense, almost militaristic language is not a bad language to use when dealing with the ego. Gives us mastery in the world. We need to have a certain amount of spiritual mastery, to have mastery, so that um, so that our so that we're in service to something greater, not simply to our egos, and especially our unconscious ego. The ego can be conscious and it can be unconscious.
Who is, when you say we master the world or we master the ego, you spoke of awareness and the soul, and for now it seemed to me that you were using those almost interchangeably. So who's making the decision? The ego or the awareness? In which case, why isn't the awareness sufficient? Why does the awareness then have to channel that awareness through ego to do good in the world, or to be in the world? Why? Why is it necessary? Why is the ego necessary in that?
It's our awareness of the ego, not the other way around. Awareness is not synonymous with the soul, not in the way that I think. Awareness is, we can have bodily awareness, and we need to have bodily awareness. We have awareness of different types at different levels of our being. Bodily awareness in a mind, mindfulness, and at deeper levels of being, where as we enter into our practice, where we often start with our body, of being present physically, attending to our body, our physical breath. It to me it sounds like if we I'm not sure if I remember or heard you right now, but Tim, but I feel that we don't want to be scared of our ego, or running away from our ego, or getting rid of our ego. We any more than any other part of us. we need simply to train it to serve us. Malcolm.
For me, I think once that turn has been made, and I'm not suggesting that I'm there spiritually in any way, but once that turn has been made towards God, and into God and into the kingdom, and we've given ourselves up to that, like the drop of water in an ocean, then we don't need an ego anymore, because we are servants. We're directed. We don't go into practice. We don't make any conscious decision to go into practice anymore, because life is our practice. There's no distinction between practice
Sure,
and
I agree.
and then we don't somehow need an ego as such anymore. But that there's a paradox there. I think I mentioned this before. I remember talking to a Buddhist nun about this this very topic, and she said, well, you need to retain a bit of a sense of self, or else you wouldn't know which mouth to put the biscuit in.
Yes, I remember you saying this
And
before.
for me, though, that worked as a koan, which is what she meant it to be, because it makes you think, well, which mouth should I be putting the biscuit in? Which mouth should the biscuit go in? Should it be my well-fed mouth, or should it be the mouth of the hungry? And that leads into all kinds of ways of thinking. So yeah, I mean, what we're talking about here is a very deep question, which relates very fundamentally to the core of our spirituality.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That,
And I'm just noticing the time. I mean, I feel we could go on for quite some time.
We're just
We just started this
Yeah.
one.
we're raising, like almost every word that we're using raises a desire to explore the meaning of those terms that there's just term after term. It's
Exactly.
every word. What do we mean by it? And yeah, ego is really hard. Even after our discussion here, and it's only 20 minutes, but I'm no closer to defining ego than I was before we began.
But at least we have some kind of notion of what we mean by it when we use the word. Each of us uses the word.
Yeah.
It's slightly different, isn't it, between the three of us, but with some commonality. But
yeah, and of course it will now change for us all. Yeah. So, I mean, we could have part 2 of this when next week record. That's an option. Or simply to leave.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss what we mean by annihilation. I think that would be really valuable.
So that would be helpful.
We would have to continue to talk about what ego might or might not be as well, I think. Because if we're talking about annihilation of ego, what are we talking about? And yeah, the biscuit. The biscuit is, I think, is really important, because if we are, when we enter the kingdom of heaven, then and that's symbolic language as well, but when we enter the kingdom of heaven and we live within the consciousness of God, consciously perhaps, then it doesn't matter. We don't need to decide what mouth we're going to put. We're going to put the biscuit in, because God knows which mouth the biscuit needs to go in. So again, where's the ego there? So
don't think what you're going to say you'll be given the
Yes.
words by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which the ego, it seems, fights against that, doesn't it? It struggles against that. It wants to decide. It wants to know, right, it's your mouth. That's the best mouth. I'm going to put it in that one.
It likes to choose.
Yeah. And control.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
Feel good about itself.
Yep. But should it be annihilated
Yeah.
just because
I'm
it's
not
not
saying yes, it should be. I'm saying,
Yeah,
that
is the question. Just
And what
because
does
it lacks discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, discipline's another word, isn't it?
Yes.
And who's exercising that as well, and what arises in us when the word discipline is mentioned. Yeah.
Mm. Well, thank you very much for having a conversation about this. I think it's really fascinating. And
thank you for suggesting it. I think.
Until the next time.